I'm Steve the Missionary, and my state's just better than yours.
I fly like Papal, get high like planes.
I have found the thing that Donald Trump and you have in common. Yes, you. Neither of you know what to do when Pope Francis has a plane interview. Everybody goes absolutely crazy like the world just got turned upside down and nobody actually knows what's going on. Not you, not Donald Trump, not anybody. So I have made this list to help you. 6 rules for reading a papal interview. Okay, first rule number 1. Papal interviews are the single least important thing that Pope Francis does. Pope Francis does a lot of things and has a lot of important parts of his job. He travels all over the world, he talks about important things and prays and says mass and So to act like this is the most important thing he does is kind of unintelligent, so you shouldn't do it. So when you see that the Pope has done an interview on an airplane, absolutely read it, it's pretty cool. But understand that this isn't the thing you should be reading. If you want to find out what Pope Francis is all about, maybe you should read the speeches that he writes and prepares before he does these things. Rule number 2. Read the whole thing. Don't read a Facebook meme about it. Don't read a HuffPo article about it. Don't read your friend's status about it. Read the interview. And the entire thing, not just the part that agrees or disagrees with you. Read the whole thing. The whole thing. The whole thing. Rule number 3, understand when the Pope goes into metaphor mode. So the Pope did this wonderfully spectacular, beautiful thing when people asked him about Donald Trump. Instead of talking about the wall, he went on talking about walls and bridges, and one should be building bridges instead of walls. You only think about building walls and maybe you're not thinking about the gospel when you make these decisions. And that was amazing, and it had nothing to do with the border. Okay, it might have had a little bit to do with the border. Pope Francis, when he talks, he doesn't talk in exact laser sharp analogy and philosophy. He talks like a South American. Think like an Argentinian for just 2 seconds when you read Pope Francis and he starts talking about bridges. Rule number 4, only read Vatican clarification notices if you are really into dense theological language. They always come out with this thing that, oh, we're going to clarify what Pope Francis is going to say, but it's always intricate theology. If that helps you, great. If that doesn't, don't even bother. Rule number 5, spend time reading other things by Pope Francis. You do know that the guy writes papal bulls and encyclicals and apostolic something or other. Apostolic exhortation. If you want to know random thoughts that come out of Pope Francis's head, then read a papal interview. If you want to know what he actually thinks and feels, wants the church to do, or ways he wants the world to change, then read everything else that he does. It's way more interesting. And rule number 6, remember what a pope is. So a pope can do a lot of things, a lot of diplomatic things. He does a lot of liturgical things. But the most basic level, a pope is a bishop. He's the Bishop of Rome. And a bishop's job is to teach. That's what he does. That's what bishops do. They make sure that the Catholics in their diocese are taught well. And this is why I was so angry when it was said that Pope Francis, a religious leader, should never comment on the faith of another man. That's what he's supposed to do. When Pope Francis was asked about an American politician, and he said somebody who builds walls instead of building bridges is acting outside of the gospel, he was doing the most popish thing in that entire interview. That's what bishops do. They take thought processes that are popular among people and they tell us whether or not they lie inside or outside the ballpark of Christian thought. The Pope is a spiritual leader, so you have to listen to him about spiritual things and understand that he speaks in that way. He speaks with metaphor, he speaks imprecisely because spirituality is tough and we need analogy and metaphor to get us through it. So get it right, guys. It shouldn't be this tough.